Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Judy WTF, What the Freud, Why Do We Repeat Things? And tonight we are going to be discussing enabling bad behaviors in a relationship. Why do we do that? And I'm hoping that I will hear from you and hear about your bad behavior and your significant other's bad behavior and how you guys maybe play off of each other, enable each other. And we have a lot to talk about. So I'm Dr. Judy Rosenberg, founder of the Mind Map System, the Be the Cause Mind Map System for healing human disconnect. We're going to dive right into it in a little while so that you can contextualize this conversation in terms of the mind map system and how the process works. And so I was thinking, why do people enable bad behavior? And the first thing that came to my mind was fear. Nobody wants to necessarily confront a person that they've been living with for 5, 10, 15 years and draw some sort of ultimatum in their mind and say, if you ever name call me again, or if you ever do something that's critical or manipulative or gaslighting or a lot of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, then we're done. And the other thing that came to mind was the media, how much the media encourages bad behavior. It's just all over the media. People are name calling each other, they're hitting each other, they are ignoring each other, they're passive aggressive with each other, and sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's in the form of comedy, but when you are living this, it's not too funny at all. So this is a call-in show, everybody. So I'm hoping that you will call in at 323-524-2599. And this is a tricky one, because what are you supposed to do if the behavior is subtle? What are you supposed to do if you've been encouraging this behavior for many, many years and now you're learning about it? How are you supposed to lay down your boundaries? So I want to refer to an article by Julie Pirano. This is an article written in June of 2017, and she talks about enabling relationships. And when there is a yin, there is a yang. When there's an enabler, there's somebody that's usually acting out. And the enabler is the person that encourages the bad behavior. We're also going to talk about secondary gain, which is, what do you get out of it when you're encouraging bad behavior? And so I really would love to hear from you. It's so much more interesting when we have live examples, and I can always pull up case studies from my mind, because I have met so many people from really all across the world, and I will take a moment to appreciate my long distance audience, people who have become a part of the Healing Human Disconnect System, the Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect System. And you're all welcome to a free PDF copy of my book, by the way, so that you can learn. You can learn about your blueprint. You can learn about the reactions that are formulated as a result of this blueprint, and how the blueprint breaks you down and eventually to the point where you are symptomatic, and maybe to the point where you don't want to function anymore on all levels. So again, please do feel free to call in 323-524-2599. I will launch into this article called Partner Behaving Badly, How to Quit Being an Enabler. And we talk about being an enabler to drug addicts and so on and so forth. And now we're talking about being an enabler to bad behavior in a relationship. There are all kinds of bad behaviors. There's cheating, of course, that's pretty bad behavior. There is name calling, that's pretty bad behavior. There's being passive aggressive, that's really bad behavior and not always so identifiable. There's also gaslighting, which is a way that you're feeling that you're being made crazy, and a whole slew of other types of bad behavior. And so she says that regardless of who's doing the enabling, one partner encouraging bad behavior and the other makes for a toxic relationship. That sounds pretty obvious. There are several telltale signs and dead giveaways. So I want to go through these telltale signs. Some of them are very, very obvious. You don't have to be a psychologist to understand that these are telltale signs. And one of the telltale signs is when you are putting your partner's needs before your own. And this is in the category of being a people pleaser. When people try to please others at their own expense, they are encouraging bad behavior in the relationship. And this may feel as though you're mitigating the damaging effects, or pretty much delaying the damaging effects, but it will catch up for you. You know the old expression, if you give an inch, they will take a mile. And as you know, I do many shows on narcissistic abuse and narcissistic abuse recovery. People who are people pleasers are really, really good bait, I will call it, good partners for narcissists to abuse them. And the way it works is that if they detect that you are a people pleaser and they detect that you'll do anything and they'll excuse all of their bad behavior, that's a wonderful relationship for them to be in because they're not going to be challenged and they can just continue their bad behavior. And what's really, really sad is oftentimes when people break up with people like this, they get really, really, obviously they feel sad because they're going through a loss, and that is very human to bond to somebody and go through the grief and the loss of a relationship. And then they get angry that that person has found someone new, and they almost they I find that they idealize the new person and think to themselves, well, she or he must be so much better than I am. And what qualities does this person have that I don't possess? And so oftentimes I find that the qualities that the new person possesses is that they will keep covert, they will keep silent, they will keep secretive, they will not confront their partner's bad behavior. And this is a sure pathway to no growth in the relationship. And some people can live the rest of their lives that way. They just won't confront their partner. They would rather have their partner than risk telling them, look, if you continue to treat me this way, I don't know how I'm going to be able to sustain this relationship. Many people will just close their eyes and ignore it, and they will enable bad behavior. So here's what it looks like. So she talks about codependency. I prefer to think of codependent relationships as a specific type of dysfunctional helping relationship, and that's the people pleaser dynamics that I'm referring to. So here's how you recognize some of these telltale signs. Number one, the idea is that you keep thinking, the enabler keeps thinking that the partner's problems are because of you. And they're actually very susceptible to the idea that it's all their fault. If only you didn't do this, if only you didn't say that, if only this, if only that, then I wouldn't have to call you these names, or I wouldn't have to hit you, or I wouldn't have to go out and get away from you and go drinking. So we all know logically that this doesn't make any sense at all. We know logically that this is not a healthy relationship. Although psychologically, remember I talked about fear-based. The fear is that if you confront this person, they might get angry, they may act out, and they may leave you. And if you have underlying fears of abandonment, the worst thing that you want to have happen to you is for your partner to leave you. One of the key phrases that I use is don't dump the person, dump the problem. And of course, if the person absolutely refuses to dump their problem, then it's going to be really, really hard to hang on to that person. So, one thing that you can do, and we will go through this again in the form of a peaceful healing dialogue, is to make it behavior specific instead of labeling the person as a bad, horrible person. You can point to the behavior and say that this particular behavior doesn't work for me. So just keep that in mind, okay? So there are ways of handling this without losing yourself in the situation and without kowtowing to their every whim and their every conscious or unconscious or verbal or nonverbal threat to back off and don't expose their bad behavior. So, one of the thoughts that I also had about bad behavior, why would somebody encourage bad behavior? Is because maybe they want to have bad behavior themselves. So, they figure that if they allow their husband or their wife or their partner to cheat, well, then they could cheat too. If they can call their husband or their spouse or their mother or anybody, any significant relationship can treat them that way, well, then fair game, you can treat that person that way as well. It's just that either way, it weakens and erodes the trust in the relationship. It weakens and erodes the goodwill in the relationship. It weakens the connection in the relationship. And since the mind map is a model for healing human disconnect, every one of these behaviors is what I refer to as a disconnect. So let's look at some of these disconnects. Okay. All right, let's go to some of them here, which she has outlined. And there are a lot of them. There's another article here on patterns of verbal abuse. And this is a really common way of misbehaving. I think I got that right, finally. Okay. So this is written by Writers Corp member Jade Anna Hughes, 11 Common Patterns of Verbal Abuse, a very common way to misbehave in a relationship. So the first thing that I want to talk about is name calling. Name calling is sometimes something that just goes on in a family, and everybody is calling the other stupid. You're crazy. You're stupid. What a loser. Get out of here. You just, I wish you were never born. These are some of the very, very harmful ones that I hear in my practice. Horrible names that leave people with terrible core beliefs. So let's jump to the mind map for a moment and source the problem, and then we could talk more about the different ways verbal abuse is expressed in individuals and families and in corporations and so on. So the mind map is divided into three parts. Panels 1, 2, and 3 represent the past. So here you see wounds of childhood, the reaction to the wounds, and the encoding of those wounds into the fiber of a person's psyche. I often concentrate on 5 childhood wounds to include verbal abuse, which is what we're talking about, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and then there is neglect, another form of abuse, and smothering or controlling, yet another form of abuse, sometimes subtle, and sometimes people don't realize that they are being controlled. So these are the ways that we can find ourselves being emotionally abused. And so if in our family of origin we have been subjected to these wounds, then you can see that out of the reactions, panel 2, which is the amygdala, the reactions that are instigated in our system. This is back to the primitive brain. If we are ignored, if we are physically abused, if we are in some way messaged non-verbally that we're not wanted, then we will have various reactions according including somatic reactions. And then ultimately, these reactions start incorporating into our psyche, into our cognition. And this is where we start interpreting these verbal messages and then encoding them into belief systems that we hold about ourselves or belief systems that we hold about the world. So if we come from a family that has encoded in us messages like you're stupid, you're unwanted, all you're good for is to please me, you're a loser, and I can go on and on and on. This is part of the work that we do at the Psychological Healing Center, is identifying negative core beliefs so that they don't ruin your life. They don't act as triggers that then get activated in relationships. But we're going back to the cause now. And if our blueprint, if our foundation is a family of origin that verbally abuses us or physically or sexually or neglects us or controls us, then we are primed for the pump. We are, in essence, groomed to be recipients and enablers of bad behavior. Because I'm also reminding you that childhood is a hostage situation. So when you are bonded to mom, dad, primary caregivers, even though the bond may not be a healthy bond, it's still a bond that speaks to your survival. So you can't at that point kick them to the curb or confront them because your very survival depends on your primary caregivers. So you have to be very careful that you don't make them angry. You have to be very careful that you don't confront them to the point where they reject you. You have to be very careful to maintain their bond and act as if everything is okay. And there is the blueprint for this kind of enabling emotional abuse. So that's a very, very important part of recognizing where you came from. What was the norm in your family of origin? Was name calling the norm? If so, then maybe that was just the way it was. And so it wasn't anything really to confront. Was drinking alcohol or smoking the norm? Well, then in your situation, you think that that's okay because that's what my mom and my dad and my family does. But is it really okay? Is it really okay as a recipient of a person who is smoking to breathe in their side stream smoke? Is it really okay for you to hop in the car with your mom and dad if they've been drinking? Is it really okay? And when you're younger, of course, you cannot confront these behaviors, which is, I wouldn't call that enabling quite because you have no choice at a certain age. But once you get in a position of where you have choices to make, now as an adult, you can make choices and do something about subjecting yourself to these bad behaviors. And let me veer off for a moment and talk about how sickening they are. These behaviors can make us very, very ill, mind, body, and soul, when we're constantly barraged with toxins from the environment in the form of side stream smoke, when we're constantly barraged with words of demeaning words, when we're constantly passively aggressively treated by not being responded to because the person didn't like the way we said something or asked something or needed something, when we're controlled because that person needs to take control of us because they don't feel that they want us to have our own say so and our own freedom in the relationship, that becomes a problem. So if you see panel numbers 1 and 2 and 3, that's the setup for being an enabler of abuse and also a recipient of that abuse. And if you're dishing out the abuse, you are basically just copycatting off of your parents' multi-generational blueprint, because this is not the only generation that exhibits these kinds of behaviors. That as we start to explore the blueprint of your mother and your father, we often find that grandmother, grandfather, and great grandmother from various sides of the family are also showing these kinds of poor behavior. And the longer you let this go, and the more intricately ingrained it is into the family structure, the more it seems like it's normal. So, in various cultures, different things are normal. And this is something that we have to address in a therapeutic manner, because oftentimes people will say to me, yeah, but people in our culture, we hit our children all the time, or we call them stupid all the time. And my answer to that is that just because something is culturally normal or culturally acceptable, it doesn't make it mentally healthy. So at this juncture, we have to choose between being culturally fitting in or being mentally healthy, and setting mentally healthy boundaries. And this is sometimes very, very, very difficult to do. And that's why um, I get a lot of resistance sometimes from families who don't want to give up the behavior. So going back to some of these ways of behaving. Um, so in her article by Jade Anna Hughes, she says verbal abuse includes being subjected to name calling on a regular basis, constantly feeling demeaned or belittled, being subjected to the silent treatment. Um, and here are a few telltale signs that you are being diminished in a relationship. Name calling, which I mentioned. Number one, name calling. This type of verbal abuse is probably the easiest one to recognize. It includes being called names or being shouted at on a regular basis. So it's not just the words, it's the tone also. Arguments that always resort to yelling and the use of aggressive phrases are examples. In a healthy relationship, partners step away from an argument and they try to bridge this relationship. Instead of humanly disconnecting, they do something which we teach at the Psychological Healing Center, which is stepping into another person's shoes. It's called empathy. And people who develop empathy and have the ability to see through another person's eyes are the most relationship friendly people to be around, because you can count on their owning their own stuff. You can count on them self-correcting. You can count on them hurting because you hurt. And this is not always the norm in a family system, or it's not always the norm in between couples. There are so many couples that I uh, help and educate, psychoeducate, that say to me things like, it almost seems like when something good happens to me, my husband or my wife seems to be upset about this. And actually, when my life is progressing in a really good way, they find reasons to be sarcastic and to tear me down. And so these are telltale signs that you're not in a partnership. And this is very painful, especially when you've been married for many, many years, to be reading books and watching YouTube videos on narcissistic abuse and verbal abuse and all kinds of abuse, and to think, what am I going to do now? I've been tolerating this for umpteen years, and I really, really don't want to get a divorce. And I have 2, 3 children now, and money commingled, and properties, and so on. It's not an easy thing to wake up to. The other type of abuse she talks about is condescension. When you're condescending to your partner, sarcastic tone of voice should not be a constant part of your interactions with your partner. Underhanded compliments. I hear of my patients complaining that on the one hand, their husband or their wife might compliment them. They call it the sandwich. On the one hand, there's a compliment, but then right underneath the surface, slap, there's an insult. And so this makes one a little bit crazy because you like the compliment, but then it's all canceled out. And at the end of the day, it doesn't feel good. So this is a call-in show, everyone. I hope that you are listening and watching and calling in 323-524-2599. It's been very, very hot in Los Angeles, which is where I'm based, in Sherman Oaks, actually. And so I know the energy is really, really low. And this is a time during this period of COVID and social isolation where we have to be extra careful with our environment. Not only do we have to be extra careful with our physical environment and not allow the COVID virus in, we also have to make sure to stay clear of the psychovirus, as I call it, the psychological virus that ingrains into the fiber of your being and then gets activated by the people around you. So for our own health, we need to keep our blood pressure low. We need to avoid eating poorly so that we don't develop diabetes. We need to keep cardiovascularly healthy so that we can have a strong system and a strong immune system. And when we're being worn down emotionally, psychologically, by the very people that are supposed to be our haven, by the very people who are supposed to have our back and soothe us, it's a horrible, horrible situation to be in. And if you're in this situation, don't brush it off, because if you do, then guess what? You're enabling the situation. Okay, so I'm going to go on about other ways that you can recognize this enabling bad behavior. If you allow yourself to be manipulated, sometimes people end up with controlling partners, spouses, bosses, and so on, especially when someone continuously pushes their partner to do and say things they are not always comfortable with. And this is something to watch out for. If your partner is pushing you to drink or pushing you to smoke or pushing you to have sexual experiences that you're just not comfortable with, or pushing or manipulating you in any way, and this could be as subtle as pushing you to agree with an investment that they're going to make, or pushing you to buy a house that you're not really sure of, or pushing you in any sort of way where your gut is telling you, this doesn't feel right. This feels like a manipulation. So this is a red flag for you to look into and make a mark next to, so that this is something that you can note that you no longer want to sign up for anymore. Another is the blaming part of it. If you really love me, you wouldn't say or do that. So when people are making these threats and blames, these are other signals. So the fourth one is criticism. It's okay to provide constructive criticism, and even with that, you have to be careful. And with constructive criticism, I always recommend that people use the peaceful healing dialogue. So if there's something that you want to say to your spouse or your children or anybody that you feel that you want to have taken the information, you might want to start by saying, hey, I'd like to talk to you about such and such and so and so. And is this a good time? And if they say, no, I'm really tired, or let's do it another day, respect that. And by the way, the Peaceful Healing Dialogue is in my book. It's also on my website, psychologicalhealingcenter.com, and you could just grab it and copy it and put it up on your refrigerator or have it in your cell phone. And it's in there, and I recommend highly that you use it, because remember, each one of these aspects of enabling your partner to have bad behavior will ultimately tear you down, and you're not doing him or her a favor either, because the next person that they're going to be in a relationship with may not appreciate this behavior. And once exposed, that person may either be a quote better enabler, in which case everyone's just going to keep getting sicker and sicker, and everyone is going to continue to spiral down into dysfunction, or that person too will wake up and realize that they don't want to be treated like that. So I think we have a call in. Is that a call in?
Hello, Dr. Judy.
Yeah, hi. And who is
Hi,
what's your name?
Rocio.
Rocio?
Yes,
Nice to meet you. Hi.
nice
So
to meet you.
yeah.
Actually, I had the pleasure of meeting you in person,
Oh, great.
and it was
Okay.
it was about 4 years ago. But yeah. Um, at the time, I went to see you was due to narcissistic abuse from my mother.
Okay.
Um, but I was married for 15 years to a batterer, and but kind of like the narcissistic abuse that I suffered
Mm-hmm.
kind of led me to the bad marriage for further abuse,
Yeah, that's
so,
wait,
and I've been like
that's
enabled.
exactly what I call the WTF, or the what the Freud. And that's what I was laying down foundationally, that when you're foundationally in a relationship with your own mother who's narcissistically abusive, meaning that she puts her feelings before your own, then you're primed for the bad behavior of a partner. So tell me a little bit about what kind of abuse you underwent in the first few years of your life.
I guess I went to, because of the neglectfulness of my mother, I was molested as a child and suffered, um, you know, I was molested more than once, and it was usually her family, and the worst situation was my stepfather.
Okay.
So, um, and then she was also physically abusive, like, beatings
Mhm,
and screaming and name calling and
mhm.
um, not being validated and just, saying stuff like, I wish you were never born. I wish you're just like the same garbage that your father is.
So
And
these
just,
are some of the
constantly.
worst. Yes, yes.
Hmm. So, fortunately, because I constantly made to feel unwanted. Um, she told me stuff like I would have aborted you, but it was too late. Um,
Mhm.
when she would say stuff like that, and also she would try to get rid of me, like she like shipped me off to boarding school in Pennsylvania when
Yeah,
I was 8,
yeah.
and just shipped me off, just to aunts, to great aunts. I mean, I just was like all over the place. So I had no real stability. And so, unfortunately, this kind of set me up into a bad marriage.
And what kind of
So,
yeah.
yeah. So, I'm done with the marriage a long time ago. I divorced in '95, but due to circumstances, I ended up living with her again, and it's a real nightmare. It's
So
it's
where are you at today? Are you living with anybody? Are you
I'm living with my mother, with my narcissistic mother here in Sherman Oaks.
very, very, very
And
painful. Okay, very painful. And how old
yes,
is she at this point?
excuse me.
How old is she?
Oh, she's elderly. She's 93.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And
Yeah.
has she softened up?
I'm sorry.
Has she softened up?
No,
No.
she is the same. She is even worse.
Yeah, they usually are, and I think I spoke about aging narcissists. They start losing their beauty and their money and their health and so on, and pretty soon people don't want to
Uh-huh.
be around them, and so they lose their
It's,
support system, and they just get angrier and angrier, and then they resort to the blame, the finger pointing starts, and so it's no surprise that you picked a partner, right? That you tolerated their horrible behavior. You had no choice in part one of your life. You had no choice about the treatment you received then because, as I mentioned, you were in a hostage situation. However, in the case of your picking of the partner, again, psychologically, you weren't really free to pick because the unconscious is going to pick for you. And that's the point of the mind map, is that you don't act out of your unconscious and keep repeating the patterns, because these patterns do not stop. You see that at age, what, 92 or 93, your mother hasn't changed an iota, has she?
No, she's
No.
the same person, if not worse.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
recently, and I remember when I was in your office, we couldn't really we couldn't have cognitive, because I was really gone. I was really uh I could not. I was stuck in fight or flight mode,
You were.
and
Okay.
I was
Did you
terrified. I
ever
could.
go through the mind map system with anyone of the team?
Oh, I think you touched on it a bit, because my session was with you, and
Okay.
as a
Was
matter
it
of
just
fact, I was in
one
with your two
session?
therapy dogs. I'm sorry.
Was it just one session?
Yes, because just my circumstance, I wasn't cognitive, and
Okay.
I really went into. I had like a nervous breakdown, basically. So I was
Gotcha.
not verbal. Yeah, I
Okay.
wasn't very verbal. So actually, my daughter went in with me. She was the one who took me because she didn't know what to do.
You know
But
what?
I really
Mhm.
lost it.
You know what?
Yeah.
If you feel now that you're more ready, and I really appreciate you opening up tonight on air, come back
Hmm.
and let's see if we could revisit some things, okay? So that you could truly
Yes.
have the time to heal. And as many of you must know, there are different team members on staff, and we try to accommodate for the
Hmm.
budget. And I know some people have different budget limitations, and we'll figure all of that out. But if you're in a place where you're more ready to do this kind of work, it's not easy because, going back to the childhood wounds, not fun.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, if we don't reprocess those feelings, then you're going to keep
Hmm.
enabling that behavior. You're going to keep being triggered in the department of you're worthless, and all the messages that your mother incorporated into the fiber of your psyche. And then unfortunately now are you caretaking your mother? Is that what's going on?
Um, she has a caregiver, but when the caregiver is not here, of course I do.
Okay.
But I just had to I kind of had to leave the home and early in the morning and not come back till like evening, because it just got so bad. And I I mentally, physically can't put myself through that so anymore. I recently had major surgery in April, and I'm not in a position to I need to focus on me,
Okay.
basically.
Okay, there's
And
nothing more painful than taking care of a mother who treated you like that. It's trying to um, I call it the vampire effect, where you're trying to give to somebody who's a taker and never gave to you, and it's really, really draining. So be really, really careful with your health, and as soon as we
right.
can dismantle these negative core beliefs, all the ones that you told me that she wished that you were not born, and these are
Hmm.
some of the worst messages, if not the worst message that you can give your child. Devastating.
Right.
And
Right.
right, and even though
I'm,
law,
I'm
see,
sure
mhm,
I'm sure many people who have suffered this kind of abuse by a parent, because your parents are the ones that give you the foundation,
right,
and you feel safe, supposedly safe and protected and whatever. And we didn't get any of that. So I think that children of narcissists get cheated out of that because
Yes, they do.
you're basically told you were never wanted to begin with.
Mhm.
You're in the way. You know, um, where can I leave you? Who can I leave you with?
Where was your
And
father in the picture? Where was your father?
no,
No,
no father.
no father, which
So
which leaves women very vulnerable and also to
yes.
sexual abuse because think about it, if there's a dad that cherishes you and protects the family, then
Hmm.
there's less vulnerability for being tampered with in that way. And was the person who sexually abused you, was that a family member as well?
Um, my stepfather.
Okay, stepfather. Okay. And
Yeah,
so
my
there's
stepfather.
there's so much, there's so many
Hmm.
layers of feelings here of betrayal and anger and just a lot of
Hmm.
unprocessed feelings that live in the body. And until we could tap into that, and that's why it isn't the easiest therapy in the world. However, I can say that it gets straight to the heart of the matter, and people um, don't have to waste therapeutic time and money. We can do a lot in 10 sessions where we break down
Hmm.
the whole the encoding and then the decoding all that damage and then the recoding into health. We could do a lot of work in 10 sessions. I could speak to
Oh.
this myself because before I created the mind map, I did psychoanalytic, psychodynamic psychotherapy, including cognitive work. I used to own a stop smoking clinics. I did a lot of behavioral work. And unless you really get down to the cause and you have a specific treatment plan, you could sit there for months and years with the patient and it just doesn't move fast enough. And then you waste a lot of time and money. So this is a very, very laid out plan. And maybe if you don't have, do you have a copy of my book?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, then just write me and I'll send you the PDF. Okay, you can
Okay,
obviously
thank you.
order it on Amazon, and then you can have you know, the hard copy of it, or you could
Hmm.
get a free PDF of the book and just read it on the computer or on your cell phone. Okay, so
Yeah, that would be awesome. And a lot of people, um, I don't know about but speaking for myself, I didn't even know what narcissism was.
right,
I
yeah,
mean, I didn't even know I didn't even know it had a name. I just I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know what it was.
hmm
And I think what happens sometimes is that people end up with therapists that have no idea what narcissism is. And I think if you don't have, then they won't be able to help you basically,
No, they
you know.
will not be able to help you. And I've even heard of situations where the therapist might say, well, if your mother feels that way about you, there must be something wrong with you. And I'm not saying don't own your own stuff and don't be responsible. However, it's really, really important for therapists to recognize the blueprint and the abuse. And my definition of narcissism is a system gone wrong. I like to take the blame out of the plan here and straight up say, look, multi generationally, it's a system where parents put their own needs before the needs of the child, and it has a backdrop of apathy, meaning lack of empathy, and there's so much pain in the individual that they keep projecting and projecting their pain on other people, thinking that by releasing the pain onto others and demeaning and devaluing and criticizing and threatening. And I know I didn't finish the article, but it just goes on to accusations and withholding and gaslighting. You see, these are the defense mechanisms of a narcissist. And if you constantly feel that you're walking on eggshells, then you probably know that you're in a toxic environment. And so the perpetrator, the narcissist, is simply in so much denial or pain of their own family of origin wounds that they don't know how to heal themselves. So they take the pathway of making other people sick, which is they're projecting their pain onto you. And in your case, since you are probably enabling bad behavior because you couldn't help it, because that's your mom, you don't want to cut her off, then you absorbed the projection
Right.
and you made them your own, and you blamed yourself and shamed yourself for having something wrong with you, to the point where you started probably believing yourself that you shouldn't have been born. You're just a terrible person. You shouldn't have. And you see how false that is logically, but yet psychologically, with the emphasis on psycho, we buy into those horrendous messages that leave us in shambles, literally.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And because I had not known a father, I
Mm-hmm.
really thought it was true. You know, I mean, I'm
Right.
a little girl, and I'm saying, oh, it must be true. And being that I didn't know my father, maybe it was true. Maybe he was bad, and I'm bad like him. I mean, you just buy it. Because you're
Buy
talking about a child.
Right, you buy in, and in this system, you learn how to identify the lies instead of identify with the lies. So you bought in, and we're helping you buy out and get out of psychological prison. And once you're no longer vulnerable to these messages, once we dismantle them, then they no longer act as triggers. You no longer are attracted to people who will sign you up to believe these things about yourself and manipulate you and threaten you with their withholdings of love and attention, affection. And so then you don't even want to buy into that, because as you grow healthier, you don't want to be part of this unhealth. And by the way, for those of you who like Instagram, I have several posts up there about narcissism, and I try to do my own artwork. So I do my own quotes now and my own artwork for the quotes. So they're kind of interesting little tidbits of messages. And you might want to go on my Instagram and see some of those quotes and share it with other
Of
people.
course.
Yeah, and for those of you who just feel that they don't really want to talk to anybody, you can buy my mind map video series, which is very organized, and will break everything down from the cause all the way down to the defenses and the breakdowns, and help you morph out. And then you can enlist the support of a mind map life coach or therapist, psychologist to help you through the process, whatever you wish. And then, of course, there's Yitz Epstein's. He hosts the program that we just recorded last in the last few months, last year, called the Be the Cause Mind Map Journey to Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. And you can sign up for that plan. You can sign up for the plan with Yitz Epstein. He's very passionate about helping people recover from this. You can sign up with me to recover from this. And it's really about treating the consciousness of apathy, okay? The system
Hmm.
gone wrong. So, look, it's not the end of the game for you. I'm sorry that it took so long and so much pain, and that you're still in the household with your mother. How unfair, right? And
Yeah.
eventually she won't be around anymore. And I hope this is a horrible thing to say, but I'll say it anyway. That sometimes there's a tremendous relief when people who've been abusive of you, when they pass away. There's a lot of guilt, of course, a lot of shame that you didn't do better, or that you didn't forgive them, or tell them that you love them or care for them more, but it's very, very, very difficult to care for people who didn't care for you. So do not go there with the blaming and the shaming of yourself. Okay. And hopefully you will have a chance to heal through this and many, many more years of healthy life for you to enjoy your life without the abuse of others in your life or abusing yourself because now it's in your psyche and now you're telling yourself that you're worthless and so on. Because at the end of the day, when everybody goes away, it's the relationship between you and you that's most important. And we've got to redo those lies and take the psychological poison and reprocess it. Okay? So do
Okay,
come
Doctor.
back. Okay? Let's have another round at this and get you on track.
Right.
Okay?
Thank you so much, Dr. Judy.
You're so welcome.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much for calling in.
You're a beautiful person, and I
Uh,
want you to know that your work. I mean, we're blessed to have a person like you and your staff. And let me tell you, I was so out of it when I met you, but your beautiful animals, your beautiful dogs were so soothing. You know,
what did you
it
say
was just
about did you say my dogs?
yes,
Yeah, I
yes,
still have
because
dogs. Oh, I love dogs.
they came into the room with me, and I remember that's the only thing I really remember that you asked me if it was if I wanted them, and I said I totally did, and it
You
was just
know,
comforting,
thank
to
you
have
for
them.
that. And I think that dogs, because they have such a pure spirit, there's no agenda. I find
Yes,
them so healing, and especially my
yes,
Simon, who's going to be 13 in January. He's the chocolate lab, and his sister's gone, but now I have a crazy German Shepherd who I adore, who's very protective. But I must say, when she's in her protective mode, she's not a chill pad, but the heart of gold. And when humans fail
beautiful.
us, let's remember to have animals around us because
Yes,
truly
they're
they have it. They have
beautiful.
it. Unconditional love, the most healing
They
force on the planet. Okay, so you're welcome back to my
exactly.
home, and I'll bring Simon.
Thank you,
Okay,
thank
okay.
you, thank you.
Take
Much
care.
love and much blessings to you and to all your staff.
Very, very sweet, very kind of you to say so. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay,
Of course.
thank you. Okay. I
All right.
think
Good evening.
we have maybe time for one quick call if anybody wants to call in. If not, I'll just move on with the article. This whole thing about enabling bad behavior. What are we going to do about this? Are we really going to leave our partner because they called us stupid? Are we going to really leave somebody because they passively aggressively blew us off? Well, let's try this. Let's try the peaceful healing dialogue. Let's try to up your self-esteem and your self-worth so that you don't feel the need to subject yourself to this behavior. And then let's see what happens. And in a perfect world, let's up the mental health of the partner who is abusive to you. I think we have one more call in. And hi, was that a
Hi, am I
hi?
on the air?
Yeah, how are you? Welcome.
Hi, Dr. Judy. Hi, this is Maura from Oregon.
Oh yes, how are you? Nice to hear from you.
Good. I'm good. Thank you. Nice to hear you. I'll be quick. I know you have little time.
Yes,
First, I was thinking today how timely your whole focus is with healing the human disconnect with what's happened in our world, right? You were
absolutely.
just thinking just a little bit ahead of, and you're so needed. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And so my question is just is a little off. It's topical, but so I haven't done your mind map therapy. I've read your book and I listened to you and I've gone that far. But on my own over the years, I've done a lot of my own work and I learned to manage, to create through DBT with skills and whatnot, to manage my own manifestations of these behaviors that no longer serve me, that help me cope with the 5 types of abuse that I had. Okay. So that you list. So then had a brain injury, and I'm finding that I am, as much work as I did, it's like because the amygdala is in charge,
Yeah.
the neurology has changed, that I am acting back in those ways, and I am the person that's saying mean words in my relationship. And I wonder, so my question is, what my experience is, I'm finding I don't think the brain ever really discards an old neural pathway that once served it, because these behaviors serve to protect us and helped us survive the abuses that we suffered. So, and often over a very long period of time. So what do you do if you're trapped where I'm the words are coming out and I know they're hurtful and I can't stand that they're coming out, and I know what would be the right thing, but you can't make your brain do it. I guess my question is, do you think your mind map therapy, actually going through that process, can help to actually like cut the cords on those neural pathways so that you don't revert to those, they no longer exist as behaviors to revert to? Or is it always just going to be like a constant management where you have to keep dealing with it no matter?
This is why I'm so against management. You know, people will say, oh, let's manage my anger, let's manage my overeating. I don't manage, and I don't expect anybody to manage. I like the concept of dismantle. Okay. And if you've had brain injuries and you're trigger happy, then that just means we better dismantle that stuff, because the trigger is like, now with you, it's a hair trigger, but we still have to dismantle the blueprint, because now you're slipping behaviorally, neural pathway wise, let's say, into that. And there's this little tiny space, even as we speak, you know that you know, okay? You know that you're behaving in an abusive way, or that you're reactive in a way that's destructive to other people. So I want you to use your imagination on this one, okay? Because when I created the mind map, I had nothing but a piece of paper and a kind of like a cool theory, like, wow, this is really cool. I could heal human disconnect by creating interconnection and reprocessing human poison and human emotional poison and so on. And that's all I had to go on. And then I started the actual work, and it was really a leap of faith. And I found that as people actually came face to face with their pain and indignation and their anger, the feelings of betrayal, they could push back. Okay, that's what it's all about. It's not just a cognitive thing where you recognize it. It's really like, wow, because of you, mom, because of you, dad, I've copycatted off of you. And now you can truly recognize that it doesn't belong. And that's why I love that statement in the book. You learn to identify it, not with it. Okay, so I still think that you can do that. I do. And though, even though it's there and it's you know, it's ingrained, and it's just, so there's going to be that little space like, you know, thanks, mom, because of you, I call people names, and because of you, and because of you, and because of you. And you've got to go back, you've got to literally send all of this poison back to the cause. And by the way, for those listening and thinking that I'm going to have you call your mother, your father, not at all. This is something that you process in the therapeutic environment, because there's a video I keep repeating. I want people to watch it. It's called The Herder Can't Be the Healer. You can't go back to your abuser and say, clean it up with me. You hurt me. You did all this damage to me, because they're not going to then turn around and apologize. It's a rare case that someone says, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I've grown an awful lot, and I could see how mommy hurt your feelings and did horrible things to you, and so on. You know, it's just a rare day, especially with particularly narcissistic parents. It's not going to happen. So that's why we have to, meaning therapist, patient, has to reenact the pain, expose the pain, and then reprocess it with the enlightened witness there to see what went down, so that you can have that space to say, wow, I identify it. And I'm pushing that. I don't need that. I don't want to be that.
Cool. Thanks, Dr. Judy.
Okay, you're welcome. Call me if you have any other questions about it. Okay, and then remember, it's not about behavior modifying or managing, it's reprocessing. That's the key.
Thanks. We'll do.
Okay.
I'll be in contact. Thank you.
Be healthy, everyone. Take care of yourselves, and especially at this time when we're a little confused about whether to put our guard up or down, and and social visit with people. Whatever you do, be smart and watch those boundaries and be respectful of other people. And I don't have to tell you to wear your mask and wash your hands and just really be as intelligent and mature about this as possible so that we could all get beyond this, and hopefully kids will go back to school, and we can start living more and more of a free, normal life. But that's only if we give ourselves the opportunity to restrict and be very, very conscious and smart about this. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you all next week. Good night, everyone.